Hardly able to keep his eyes open. The double shifts he had been asked to work had taken quite the toll on the young Daishin known as Rutak. This had been his last double after working them for 10 straight rotations. Without realizing it, he had nodded off as he rode the orbital elevator planetside, the music from his oversized headphones relaxing him a bit too well. Quickly realizing that he had nodded off, he found that he had actually fallen asleep and missed disembarking. To make matters worse, he was on his way back up to the ring. With a silent groan, he set an alarm on his phone and leaned back against the corner he had temporarily claimed as his own. It would be another hour or so before he was planetside again. Closing his tired eyes and zoning out for what felt like a few moments, he was startled by the alarm he had set. With 5 minutes or so until the elevator touched again, he stretched and tried to wake himself up so that he would not miss a stop again. Rubbing the grogginess out of his eyes, he looked at his phone and sent off a message to Selena, telling her that he was on his way home. The two of them had kept messaging each other throughout his time working, especially on his breaks. While not quite as good as in-person conversation, they had come to know each other rather well, and even scheduled another lunch date since their attempted first had been ruined by horrendous events. Disembarking finally, and flashing his updated identification card to the checkpoint officer, he was allowed to pass with his concealed pulse pistol. Purchasing an overpriced Daishin equivalent to a Terran energy drink from a vending machine, he began his trek to the parking garage. Tossing the now empty beverage container into a trash can as he entered the parking garage, it was not long before he was on his hoverbike and spinning home faster than the regulated speed limits allowed for. With the hot summer air rushing over his scales, his metabolism started to kick into a higher state, waking him up better than the beverage he had paid for. While he was excited for Selena's and his lunch date tomorrow at the local restaurant, he could not wait for their excursion on First Contact Day. The holiday was one of the few that was celebrated by the entirety of the planet in orbital ring. The fact that it was one of 8 such planetary holidays nearly ensured it would be an outing to remember, as shops, vendors, and eateries would have a theme of some kind dedicated to the event. Gerd had informed him that she and Selena were planning something together, and that he was required to join them for another night out on the town, this time without her getting sick from the festivities. Finally arriving into his much cooler studio apartment, the cool temperature lowering his metabolism once more, he locked the door and crashed out of his couch, not even bothering to convert it into a bed. He was asleep in minutes. Obsidian parked his hovercar in front of a run-down, small 2-story home. He had seen many of these kinds of models before, made by all sorts of construction companies. The home was an older, prefabricated unit with a living space on top of the small garage that could hold possibly 2 vehicles. The building itself was a cube that was partially modular, allowing 2 units to be built next to each other without taking up additional space. However, in this instance, the home was singular, with only a maintenance access pathway separating the unit from the others around it. Oddly enough, more than half the units in this block were empty, and possibly beyond repair, showing that had sat vacant for a very long time. This far out from anything of true note, you could see how such things could happen, especially in this rural region composed of mostly automated vertical farming systems. Pushing such thoughts out of his mind as he exited the high-end sports model hovercar and putting it into a power save mode, he walked up to the dilapidated unit as he made sure he had his weapons on him. A modified Terran pistol that was designed for piercing armored foes, and a high-yield, slow-cycling pulse pistol capable of deep tissue penetration. It was an effective small-arms combination. Odd pushed the doorbell and waited patiently in the hot, blue-tinted light of the summer sun, totally unbothered by it. Being the only crystalline species in the known galaxy granted his people unique traits. The most well-known was a high temperature resistance and a fatal weakness to low temperatures. The crystalline structure did not compress well under low thermals, and would simply crack. Freezing to death was the most painful way a Miao Yil could die, and their people considered such executions a declaration of war. Selena's untranslated voice broke him from his musings. What kind of cheap building is this to not have an installed translator program? Ob thought. Sorry, Selena's translated voice said again. I've not yet managed to get a translator installed. How can I help you? Hello, I'm Obsidian. I have an appointment with Selena Thomas. Right, I'll be right down. Give me a minute. A few moments later, the front door opened up, revealing a very short Terran, whose skin was a dark olive tone. Each of her limbs were prosthetic and had simp skin, showing that they were very high-end. Clad in a shirt that displayed some kind of fluffy animal with a phrase in it that did not quite translate to the pair of shorts. A particular weapon of Terran design was strapped to her leg in plain view. The rumours that were buzzing around on the darknet about this small human seemed to be true, based solely on her appearance. If her prosthetics were as high-end as he suspected, there would be no doubt of them having hidden surprises, and coupled with the fact that she was in such an out-of-the-way area in a rundown prefab, lended a sort of hidden in plain sight sort of obfuscation. "It's nice to meet you," Selina said. "Come this way. Let's see what you have and what I can do." Ob walked in, following her. While the outside was pleasant to a species such as himself and a few others, the inside was much cooler, but not unbearably so. He estimated it was around 300 thermal units, while outside was around 320. If the inside of a home were 20 units cooler, he would be in trouble for his species' version of hypothermia. Sitting in the slightly uncomfortable reinforced chair with a single thick data cable attached to an access port on the side of his neck, he watched the Terran work. There were multiple high-end printing machines and computers taking up the available space. Data and power lines were taped down onto the bare concrete to prevent beams from tripping over loose cords. "Mrs. Sidian," Selina said, "I have a few questions for you." "Ask away, Miss Thomas," Ob replied. "How long have you had your integrated support apparatus system?" "A long time. Many galactic standard solar rotations." And lastly, how often do you overstress the apparatus? Be real with me, please." "At least 4 times," Ob replied honestly. "That's what I thought," Selina said. "I won't do work for you, not in good conscience at any rate." Seeing the look on Ob's face, she quickly said, "Listen to me, okay? Whoever did work on you either didn't know what they were doing, or were being particularly cheap. Based on the internal bioreaders and your information you just gave me, I think your apparatus is tungsten plated, with a toxic heavy metal core and not a true tungsten alloy apparatus. Any kind of fly system will stress your build and cause further damage. If you don't get your entire build removed, you'll die of heavy metal poisoning, and quite frankly, I'm surprised you're not exhibiting any symptoms of it yet." She waited for her words to sink in before she continued. "I'm not an expert in mineral physiology, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. If you go see a specialist and I'm wrong, I'll grant a 15% discount for your trouble. But if I'm right, I probably just saved your life." Ob was silent for a long moment, and then spoke as he removed the data cable as he got up. "Thank you for your candor, Miss Thomas. You've been most enlightening and have answered some silent speculation I've been having. I feel that you are correct in your heavy metal assessment. I have need of answers, and perhaps you shall see me again. Whatever you're going to do, Mrs. Sidian, do not stress your support system. Keep it well within safe limits, or you may not have a chance of any kind of recovery. As per our agreement, diagnostic is free, though I feel if I see you again, this data will be useless." Ob nodded, and was shown the way out by the small Terran. As he mounted to his vehicle and then drove to Tal V on automated pilot, already looking for a proper doctor in the vast metropolis, if the Terran was right and his support apparatus was leaking microdoses of toxic heavy metals into his body, then he and a certain wetware installer were going to have words. Selina sighed as she shut down the analyzer programs and lowered the thermostat to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. She had kept it to 80 because she had been expecting Ob and knew that lower temperatures were bad for his species, and that below freezing was usually a death sentence for them. It was only marginally worse than the slow death by heavy metal poisoning. Like all complex fauna, it was impossible to fully extract toxic metals from tissues, organs, or other biological structures. Turning to her printer, she could see that the hand she was printing for an elderly male bimpops was mostly finished. As the client had a limited webware interface, the hand had a focus on pressure and kinesthetic sensory functions, and had SimSkin only on the fingertips due to bandwidth and processing limitations. Primarily constructed of aluminium and carbon fiber due to monetary issues and a lack of need for anything high-end. Sending off a message to her client that his hand would be completed ahead of schedule, she asked if he could arrive sometime tomorrow evening to have it attached and run calibration tests to make sure everything was working properly. As her day had given her an unexpected boost in free time, she decided to head to Talvi ahead of schedule and scheduled a ride. She really needed a vehicle of her own. "You have crashed and are now dead. Congratulations on your 4th failure." The oddly chipper, almost game show hostess computer voice declared to Selina, "You have killed 207 people so far this session." "Is the AI here always like this, or is it just for me?" Selina asked her piloting instructor. "It's just this particular one," the middle-aged mid-boss female replied. "This AI is a mostly decommissioned military flight assistant. On your data files it says you've had a pilot's license. How are you so terrible with this?" "That's for Terran flight craft, and, oddly enough, unofficially, a Terran Pelican-class ODST dropship. Not Galactic Alliance standard anything. The controls and layout are all different. I have to relearn everything. I see, her instructor said, not believing in her ability to pilot the dropship. Okay, let's start from the beginning again. Alright, Cena said, as she began the pre-flight checklist in the simulator. It was a full mock-up of the craft she now owned in storage, and the mostly decommissioned AI ran the simulation while the instructor talked and informed. This particular AI was sinister and quite nefarious, throwing all sorts of obstacles at her, from drunk pilots and inclement weather, all the way to spontaneous engine and power failures. It seemed to not only delight in her failures, but also seemed to get off, as much as a digital program could, when her crashes involved the deaths of others. The fact that it kept a running tally did not help. Time's up, the instructor replied, as the AI started to power the simulator down. Damn, I wanted to see her crash again, the AI said. She was about to hit a children's school. It would have been glorious. Shut it, Milton, the instructor said, or I'll have you reset. But the disciples, I should do it anyway. You're long overdue. Oh, all right, ma'am. But I'll have you know I now train some of the best civilian pilots. Yes, which is the only reason why I haven't done it yet. I also don't need you to cause emotional trauma in our clients. Consider it an order. Again. Yes, ma'am. Milton's voice took on a different tone, as he received an order from a superior, his military origin shining through. I'm sorry you had to endure that, the instructor said to Selena. Milton is usually kinder than this, however. I think it's because he's training a terror and that he's making things difficult. It's no matter, Selena replied, as she and the instructor got out of one of the many simulation units for the piloting class she was attending. I think I'll need another lesson or two before I feel comfortable taking Waku's piloting exam. You are a remarkably quick learner. You'll do fine. With her lesson concluded, she paid the fee, and scheduled another one set for a week later for the same time of day. Walking out to the air-conditioned building and back into the hot sunlight, she grumbled a bit, and went about walking aimlessly. Still wearing her cat-beam tank top, shorts and holstered weapons as before, though with a pair of sunglasses on to shield her eyes, she explored this part of Tau V. The most of the metropolis that she had seen had been the spaceport and some of the nightclubs. Now she wanted to see what this new area held during the day. As she walked, she garnered strange looks, mostly due to the fact that she had her printed weapon on clear display. It was a design that had been tried and true, a slightly bulkier version of the standard variable Gauss pistols that ODSTs used, and was openly shared amongst the gearheads of that arm of the Terran military. The design itself got around most printers' internal security protocols, by having the printer make each individual part out of sequence for the components to be assembled by hand. Due to this, the weapon was bulkier and heavier than the actual variable Gauss pistol it was based on, and required a certain degree of strength to accurately and properly use one-handed. Such a requirement was easily overcome by her prosthetic arms. She just needed to work on her lackluster aim. Corporal Williams had told her she was hopeless, and stick to spray and pray type weapons. She had to agree with his assessment. Spying a street food vendor, she walked up to a sprawling male she had never seen before. Much like Gerd, the male was simply wearing a bit of cloth to cover his modesty. While Gerd was typically a lighter shade of green, this male was of a much darker hue. Looking at what the tall man was selling, it was some kind of grilled sausages, wrapped with another kind of meat. Now that she was next to the man, she could detect the scent of roses, just over the smell of sizzling meat and oils. I didn't know that your, scent was universal, Selena said to the vendor. One of my friends is a sprouling like yourself. She frequents my rooftop. The vendor said, then understanding came over him. Fornification pheromones. It's universal among our kind. Strong, direct sunlight usually triggers its production. It's sort of why I'm standing out here. The breeze disperses it before it can do anything to anyone, and I can enjoy the sunlight, as it were, with little fuss. I thought you Sproutings tended to enjoy yourselves. Most times, yes, he replied, adjusting some of his headphones and leaves. However, right now I'm, how you say, edging, I believe. Unless you want to help a fellow out, Not today, perhaps another time, Selena replied with a gentle shake of her head. I'm interested in meat of a different kind. Such a shame, we both enjoy it, our paths are compatible, he said with a sad tone, then changed topics abruptly. So, what do you like? I've got a few things grilling here, I can even toast a kind of bread if you like. That would be great, Selena replied. Wait, I thought your people didn't like eating plants or grains. It's a common enough trait, but food is food. I would not deny others their likes, so long as... The vendor paused and shuddered, eyes closed and breath deepening. Did you just... Selena asked, looking at the vendor. He took a moment to reply and quickly adjusted the food on his large grill to prevent it from burning. Yes, from the sunlight. It's different than the physical light and much less messy. Anyways, what can I offer you? Perhaps being friends with Gert had desensitized her. Or perhaps it was merely the plant-based Xeno's basic reaction to the direct summer sunlight. However, Xena found it quite easy to ignore what had just transpired and went on with her conversation. She was not sure if she should be worried about it. What you're making, Ellie, smells good, Xena found herself saying. Are you using herbs or the like? Yes, though perhaps not strong enough for a human palate. Definitely nothing with capsaicin. I thought as much, she said with a bit of a sigh. And yes, I would like a toasted bun to go with what you have there. With a sprawling equivalent to a nod, the vendor got to work preparing a meal for Selena. The oddly coloured, multigrain bread was lightly toasted rather quickly, absorbing some of the fats and oils from the meats as it did so. He then smeared a purple sauce of some kind on one side, and the other one he put a blue sauce. Cutting two of the wrapped sausages in half, he made a kind of sandwich. Wrapping the finished product in wax paper and putting it into a cardboard box, he handed it to Selena. That should be to your liking, I hope. It's a favourite combination by many different patrons. With a nod, Selena paid for her food, and a transparent bottled drink with a pretty silvery liquid inside it. Then went to sit under one of the many random awnings that had been pulled out in preparation for the hot summer months of Warutteri. Digging into her space sandwich, she quickly determined there was a barbecue bacon-wrapped sausage space sandwich. While a tad on the bland side, it was a little sweet and tangy, and the sauces gave it a peculiar smoky taste. Truthfully, it smelled better than it tasted, and the drink was only mildly sweet and citrusy. At least the liquid looked pretty, like drinking silver-turned liquid. Thinking as she ate her space sandwich, she wondered if it was Mipos or Nemean cuisine that was so bland, as those species were quite prolific throughout all of Alliance space. She would have to conduct trial and error. So far, Dioshine and now sprouting cuisine, at least their street food, were oases of flavour in a bleak desert of blandness. While she had been to a goatee establishment with Goik, the selection of ingredients available overall was quite limited, and it showed in their cooking, even if it was all quite good. Throwing everything away into their proper receptacle, her phone rang. While she did not recognize the number, the auto-translation software stated that the number was from Talvi Regional Security. Entree, she said, perhaps a bit too formally. Selena Thomas, Prosthetist. How can I help you? Hello, Miss Thomas. This is Mr. Tshirt. I'm with Talvi Regional Security Medical Division. Your services are being requested.